Let me read to you a passage from the 14th chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel, verses 1 to 12. It's the Gospel for Saturday of the 17th week of Ordinary Time. St. Matthew writes, "At that time Herod the Tetrarch heard the reports about Jesus, and he said to his attendants, 'This is John the Baptist. He has risen from the dead. That is why miraculous powers are at work in him.' Now Herod had arrested John and bound him and put him in prison because of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife. For John had been saying to him, 'It is not lawful for you to have her.' Herod wanted to kill John, but he was afraid of the people, because they considered him a prophet. On Herod's birthday, the daughter of Herodias danced for them and pleased Herod so much that he promised with an oath to give her whatever she asked. Prompted by her mother, she said, 'Give me here on a platter the head of John the Baptist.' The king was distressed, but because of his oaths and his dinner guests, he ordered that her request be granted and had John beheaded in the prison. His head was brought in on a platter and given to the girl, who carried it to her mother. John's disciples came and took his body and buried it. Then they went and told Jesus." That's from Matthew chapter 14, verses 1 to 12. It suggests the conscience. What do I mean? You know, in Plutarch's account of Alexander the Great, we read his account of Alexander's slaying of his friend Cletus. At the feast that Alexander put on for his friends, we read, "Some of them started to sing a song making fun of some Macedonians who recently had been defeated in a battle with the barbarians. Cletus objected, at which Alexander joked at Cletus's complaint. At this, Cletus got to his feet and said, and I quote, 'Those poor Macedonians you laugh at have, by their wounds fighting for you, made you so great, now that you disown your father Philip and call yourself the son of Ammon.' Alexander was stung at his words, but Cletus persisted. At that, Alexander killed him with a spear." What was the issue here? If Plutarch's account is correct, I suspect it was because Alexander's corrupted conscience could not bear the words of Cletus, and he killed his friend for it. So it has been down the ages. Whatever about the merits of Cletus's accusation, the incident may stand as an image of the contest between might and right. Power has been confronted by conscience, and conscience has repeatedly been struck down. So it is in our gospel passage today that I read earlier. Herod the Tetrarch had violated the laws of marriage by taking his brother's wife, and John the Baptist arrived from Judea to confront the civil ruler. What mattered to John was God and his holy will. What mattered to Herod was his own convenience and indulgence, powered by Herodias, his willful, unlawful wife. Did John confront him publicly, and perhaps in the presence of Herodias as well? Perhaps. I think it is probable. Cletus was but a friend of Alexander, and perhaps not much better of a man than his famous friend. But John the Baptist was one of the most moral men of all time, and we have that on the word of Jesus Christ. In hearing John, Herod Antipater was hearing a very holy man who uttered the voice of God in both nature and the revealed law. He could not bear it. Herodias hated him, and Herod imprisoned him for it. Time and again in human life and in the course of history, the voice of conscience appears as supreme, while constantly defeated and suppressed by the voice of might. In the contest between the two, John the Baptist lost his life. The issue was the sanctity of marriage and the divine law regarding it. There have been many critical moments in the history of England, and England has been a critical player in the history of the West, and the West has been critical for the history of the world. One such moment was the contest between Thomas à Becket, Archbishop of Canterbury, and King Henry II of England. Murdered in 1170 at the instigation of the king, Thomas à Becket had persistently confronted the king over his violations of the rights and privileges of the Church. A more critical moment occurred some 350 years later, when King Henry VIII assumed, by decree, the visible headship of the Church, to circumvent the papal refusal to allow his divorce of Catherine and remarriage so as to gain an heir. The resignation from his office as Chancellor of the Kingdom by Sir Thomas More amounted to a public refusal of the royal claim, and this was reinforced by More's refusal to take the oath required by the First Succession Act. The other celebrity to follow the same path was Bishop John Fisher, Bishop of Rochester and Chancellor of the University of Cambridge, one of the most learned bishops of the Church at the time. In 1535 both were tried for treason and executed. It was a confrontation between self-will and personal convenience and the testimony of the conscience. Conscience was suppressed and its representatives snuffed out. Every human life can be seen in these terms: the contest between a rightly ordered conscience and the disregard of the moral law as enshrined in nature and the revealed law of God. The story of human history can be understood in these terms too. Our gospel passage today may be viewed from various perspectives, but one is surely that each person is faced with the duty to heed a properly enlightened conscience. This does not mean simply one's own sincere judgment, because in the case of a corrupted person, a properly enlightened conscience will probably be impossible if it is unaided. Herod Antipater, Henry II and Henry VIII were not morally equipped to form unaided a right moral judgment. They needed the testimony of holy men such as John the Baptist, Thomas à Becket and Thomas More. Let us be alive to the supreme issue in life, which is the following before all else of an objectively correct and properly enlightened conscience. One's conscience can so easily be rationalized away into an approval of what are merely one's own preferences. We need to be taught from on high, and this is done especially by divinely authenticated teachers. The teacher of mankind, divinely authenticated as such, is supremely Jesus Christ. He is present in his body, the Church, guiding reason and conscience in its search for the objective truth. Let us live by a rightly ordered conscience. As St. Paul writes, "Let this mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus."